Never seen a smile so big on my little old lady's face until I tell her I'm going fishing all weekend. Pack up all of my bait and I make plans for 7:45 and I swing around, pick up my date for the weekend. Some reason she seems to please when I'm leaving. There's something I'm missing when I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing.
Yeah, baby.
Yes, sir. Well, good evening, CFNers. Fingers crossed that we don't get bumped this week because of the feed. It's interesting, you know, like you reach out to Facebook and you try and find out what the copyright infractions were, and all you hear is crickets. Nothing. Never received anything. But as quick as that, they can take your feed away and remove your content. Anyway, it is what it is. I hope all of you are able to get on. I see the numbers are starting to pop up, so that's great to see all of you starting to join. It is a wonderful day outside. So if you are joining us, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time. Lloyd's in the house. Nick's here. Very gracious, Nick. We're going to be mentioning you later on in the episode, but I know you got your bait fuel, and we're going to be giving more of this away. Hopefully after tonight's show, we've got some interesting stuff ready to go. I see Eve's in the house as well as Trisha. Trisha, again, it's always nice to see you jump in first, as always. I just wanted to mention, I got a couple of announcements before we get to, of course, our favorite panel. Mike is going to be coming up shortly, too, to discuss our last giveaway and our final wrap-up show tomorrow for the CFN Fish Off. But Barb from Fish with the Parrot wanted me to let you know that everything you see here is in the hats, the buffs, and the flags. So if you are interested in donning any of this swag, please get a hold of Barb at fishwithapparel.ca and place your orders. The boat flags, that is something that I've got to order very, very soon because I certainly want to put that on the boat when, in fact, and I am embarrassed to say this, once I get the shrink wrap off the boat. Yeah, I said that. Yeah. Unfortunately, it is still wrapped up tight for last winter. It's embarrassing to say, but it is the reality of what's going on. Also, for all those who attended the CFN Western Retreat at Jan Lake Lodge, thanks so much for participating, showing up, and sending me all your content. I know Taylor Huck is putting together a wrap-up video of the adventures. We had all kinds of things that happened on that trip. We had dead batteries, we had lots of fish, lots of fun, lots of memories, and a whole big box of good times. So thanks so much to Jan Lake, Walt, and all of you that went. It was truly awesome to see all you CFNers show up and participate in what was something to remember, because it looked like a fantastic facility. Just to recap, you're not going to believe this, but the CFN Retreat 2022 is less than a month away. August 14th it starts, goes to the 21st. I just want you to know, if you want to be a part of this group, please get in touch with Warren and Doris immediately, because there's only 4 spots left. 4 spots. So it's a discounted rate, courtesy of Horwood Lake Lodge, but it's for our community. They do it for our community. And with everything that's going on, think about this for a second. They were able to maintain the same price as last year, this year. That's with increased prices in food, increased prices in gas, and increased prices in insurance, and of course, everything else. So the fact that they're doing this for us, as I said, there's only 4 spots left. It is a true testament to our community, because you certainly want to help out, show up, participate, support, whatever you want to call it. We just want to see you there, because it is always a great time. Lots of great memories, lots of great fishing, and of course, some great people. And if you missed these 2 events, of course, there's always Camp McIntosh. This is going on in September. It is September 23rd, which is a Friday, to Sunday, September 25th. It is the OFC Nation Retreat. Moose, Jeff, and perhaps a conglomerate amount of people are going to be showing up to this. So if you are interested, by all means, get a hold of Andre and Tracy at Camp McIntosh. The website is at the bottom there. Love to see you there. I think it's going to be another fantastic episode. An event. Speaking of a great event, this is going on this Saturday, and I'm really excited to be able to attend this. Yes, it is a bit of a jaunt up to Elliott Lake, but this Saturday, July 23rd at 8 a.m. it starts. There is literally going to be 150 kids on the government docks up in this area. This is obviously put on by the Elliott Lake and area rod and gun clubs. Of course, it is a kids fishing derby that is being held, and those are all the wicked sponsors that are associated with that poster. And CFN and River Reapers are happy to be a part of that. They are, our buddy Corey has offered up another plethora of stuff. So looking forward to taking those 2 boxes up to this great event this Saturday. We'll be hitting the road on Thursday, and looking forward to seeing all you CFNers up at this fantastic kids fishing derby, because that's what it's all about. And of course, if you don't know, the CFN Fish Off is airing, not will be, but is airing on Sportsman Channel and WFN, the World Fishing Network. And to tell us more about that is our good buddy Mike Consul. What's going on, Mike?
I can't believe season 3 is airing right now. I don't even know what it's on episode 2 or 3 or 4. I can't keep track, but for those who have reached out and said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe so-and-so caught that fish," or "My money is on this team," people have been messaging me, and it's a toss-up, Scotty. It is a toss-up. We have Team Beeler, Team Little John, and Team, oh my gosh, why can't I remember? Do you remember, Scotty?
Team Little John, Team Landry.
Oh, Team Landry, of course.
Yep.
And of the people messaging me, they're like, "Oh, the Landry's team, they got it," or the Beeler's team, they got it, or the Little John team, they got it, because it's not just those families, but they have 2 anglers outside of their province, part of their overall team. So it's interesting. You got your money on a team, Scott?
I did. I did. But yes, I was pleasantly surprised. Let's just say that. I had a good feeling that a certain team was going to win. But the one thing I will say is they all competed extremely hard.
Oh, it's tight.
The fact that it came down to as close of a competition as it did, at the end of the day, Mike, that's all we could possibly ask for is to have a close competition, and we got that, and then some. There's some great storylines, some great biographies and depictions of where they were fishing, who they were fishing with, and what they were using. So stay tuned. It's not just for entertainment. You're going to learn a few things, which is something that I truly appreciate, because that's what it's all about. These folks will teach you a few things about what it is to use and how to use it.
And it's highly entertaining. Like, you'll see Bill Landry's posts, you'll see Mark and Erica's posts, and then you'll see the Little John's posts, and you can only learn so much about them from a picture. But when you see them on camera, they're singing, they're dancing, they're like waking up in the morning, they're getting skunked. Like, it's real life, real fishing, real people. And so come enjoy the ride 4 times a week on the Sportsman Channel. Just go to Sportsman Channel website, find out what days they're on, and 3 times a week on WFN.
Right on, buddy. Now, I see you're wearing a Talos jersey. Tell us the significance of that.
I know we got to get to our panel, but 2 things, and join us tomorrow at 7 p.m. I feel like I can catch more fish with this. I don't know. Like, do I look like a professional angler right now? I've never worn it before. I've always just shown it. I've always just done this.
But you kind of look like a fish whisperer because there's a huge bass behind you if you're not aware. So yes,
I feel like a professional angler.
There you go.
Wearing this, like I'm ready to go fishing right now. And as you can see, what side is it on right here? Signed by Italo himself. We're giving away this one, and we're giving away this one to 2 separate anglers. Maybe they're on the same team, maybe they're on different teams. All you got to do is fill out our feedback survey because we want to hear from you. The reason why we get better, this fish off gets better, all our online tournaments get better is because of your feedback. And every year we change because of your feedback. But we need to hear from you because we need to know we know what our experience is, and it's amazing. But we need to know what your experience is. And if we can make that experience better, then tell us how. So the deadline is tonight at midnight. You know what I'll do? I'll post the link on the CFN Fish Off page. I'll post it. And if you haven't filled it out, you can fill it out and let us know what we could do better. And then we're going to pull out 2 random names who fill out the survey. And you might get one of these personally signed jerseys from Italo.
Right on, buddy. Do you guys wear all the prizes first before sending them out?
First time I've ever worn it.
You know what, Tony? Yeah. It's our party, and we'll cry if we want. No, I'm kidding. No, absolutely not. Usually they get sent to us sometime after the event. But in this case, Italo and, of course, Dave Sanderson, who set all this up, was able to get these things early and on time. And they've been great props. And as I said, we are very honored by Italo's generosity. That's for sure.
Yep. So we're spinning the wheel tomorrow, 7 o'clock. Our last tourney Tuesday. Come join us. And if you are in Ontario, you might know that Multi-Species Madness on the MyCatch app in collaboration with CFN is running this weekend. It runs for 10 days. So starts Saturday and it ends holiday Monday. So 10 straight days. All you got to do is try to catch as many species as possible. Size does not matter. It could be a 4-inch perch, and that's 1 point. It could be a 6-inch largemouth bass. That's 1 point. Whoever gets the most points wins. And if you place in the top 10, you are in the money. So that starts Ontario this Saturday. There's 4 of them, 4 different provinces, but Saturday starts in Ontario. Go to anglersatlas.com/tournaments and check it out.
Right on, brother. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow, my friend.
7 o'clock, Tourney Tuesdays. Have a good show. Baby.
Take care. All the best, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
And before we bring up Big Jim, here's a word from our sponsor and our favorite video. about you, Jim, but that video and that song never get old. What are you afraid of copyright infringement? Is that why you're doing that?
I'm on strike. I'll have my people talk to your people.
Well, it'll be a short conversation because it'll be the wall you're talking to, or at least your people will be talking to. How's Jimbo? Well, solid as rock.
Getting soft, getting old.
Dude.
Man, it's been raining here now. It rained this afternoon like monster. Just like the clouds were purple over the house on the radar.
Is that right?
And we're getting it again right now. It's been going on since about 6:20.
Wow.
And it's just incredible.
Well, I heard you got warnings out your way.
Oh, yeah, we got a warning for everything. Heat, rain, earthquakes, tornadoes. So the big change at Big Jim's was, hang on.
Do we need a drum roll?
No. Remember that beautiful crabgrass garden we had out front? Which we spent years growing?
Yes.
Here's what the front of the house looks like now.
Beautiful. And if you don't know, Jim's house is going to be for sale very, very soon as we put on the market, but the curb appeal has just increased.
Just went up. So I've removed the Zodius crankbait rod from the deal. So.
There. Tony wants to know, when's the garage sale, Jim?
Secret.
Oh, there you go, Tony. So stay tuned. We will be announcing it here on CFN if it does happen.
Hey, did you see my note?
No.
My note about Dr. Feelgood?
No.
Dr. Tufts?
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely.
That's his new nickname now. So when he comes on, you have to find Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood and play it for him.
All right. Well,
I don't think he got it at first.
Well, then we'll have to do it on YouTube because it seems like if we even hum a song that it resembles anything that's copyrighted, this gets shut down. So we'll have to, I don't know, maybe play it on a xylophone or something.
Yeah, it's probably an algorithm catching it.
Oh, it didn't take long. As I said, I don't know what it is that disturbed the feed last week. I'm still reaching out to Facebook to find out. I want us to be on the up and up.
They don't even know. I bet.
Probably not.
I bet you it was an automated algorithm. There's a piece of music there. There's something.
Yeah.
And it picked up on it.
100%.
So I was going to sing tonight, but.
Well, I would hope you're going to be singing praises of good tidings and congratulations to our buddy Corey Johnson, who I'm telling you, if you are not a tournament fan or a fan of bass tournaments, I don't know how you wouldn't be on the edge of your seat this past weekend. That whole event was just riveting right to the end. And Corey, as you said, Jim, in your post on Facebook, he just would not quit. He would never give up.
No, he was. Well, I said to Tammy on the last day here, I said he's going to go to every spot he's ever caught a smallmouth. Most people realistically have never caught a 6-pound smallmouth in their life. He's probably got 50 waypoints on his machine right now where he's caught one like that.
Oh,
whether it would be in practice or in a tournament over the last decade or 8 years or whatever it is.
Right.
They've been fishing down there. And I told her, I said, he will run them because the only way he can win is to get probably close to 30 pounds. Because I felt that other young lad was going to bring it, and he did.
Yeah.
And the whole difference in this thing this weekend was that they had 4 days of almost no wind. Like to some people, it would seem like a lot of wind, but to these guys, it was nothing. I mean, there was nothing that they couldn't most of the time run flat out in if they wanted to. And I just knew he was going to do that, and he did it, and he came up a couple of pounds short. But that calm water, they are masters of operating at the front of the boat in 3-foot waves. And that's another thing that most of the people have never done is try to run an electric motor in a 3-foot wave, because every second wave's over the front of the bow. Down by the seats in the bass boat, there's this much water half the time.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. That's why you'll always see all the stuff up on the deck for the cameras at the back, not down in the cubby hole because they fill it up with water, quite often. Nobody had to operate like that this year. It was just dead calm. There was so many guys out on the lake. I had a buddy of mine on vacation down in the St. Lawrence, and he said to me, I couldn't believe all the boats out in the mid, like 10 miles into the lake. Like they're out on the main ducks. They're right across. Some of them were over close to past Timber Island.
Oh, wow.
You know, coming all the way around there to Sandbanks almost. Like you can't do that when there's 3 or 4 foot waves, or God forbid, 5 or 6 foot waves.
You can, but I'll tell you, it's it's uncomfortable as all heck.
Yeah. Like there's guys that have won there before. Like I think that was the last day last year in the Open. Corey only fished for about 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Wow.
And he won the Open, the BSS Open tournament there.
Yeah. But
you figure they got eight hours and he fished for less than 3. The rest of the time was spent boom, 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 and it's a snake show. So he was the first person to ever weigh over 100 pounds of smallmouth in a Bassmaster tournament. That's 4 days. And he also weighed the biggest bag of smallmouth ever, which was 28.8 or 28.5.
Just shy of 29. It was incredible.
So he was right up there. That is probably going to stand for a long time, that one. It's going to stand for a long time, but they just hit it perfect. They hit it just before the fish meander to deep water a bit more. Like there's always a lot of shallow fish there, but they hit it just before they went.
Incredible.
I don't doubt by the end of this week, the result would be, or maybe 10 days or so, the result would be completely different because the fish will have left. They'll have gone into those bigger groups in deeper water. And mind you, that means if you could fish them in deeper water and with all the electronics now, they have no problem doing that. But hats off to the young lad that won too. And, he got up on a stage and he said, those guys have come to Sturgeon Bay and taken our money so many times. It's just nice to come and do it here once.
And that's class. And for a young angler like that, and some of us when we were that young, we're all full of piss and vinegar. And
he seems like such a nice kid.
Yeah, that's sheer class.
But Corey will still slip in that he's still the all-time penalty minute leader on a Peterborough Pete's. So he'll slip that in once in a while.
So he's not winning the Lady Bing anytime soon. But if you folks want a breakdown, Jason Barnucz has shared the link on YouTube for the event. So as I said, exciting as all heck. And as I said, if you're not a follower or you don't enjoy watching bass tournaments, by all means, it might change your mind watching this because what an event. It came right down to the last minute.
I got a bone to pick. So a buddy of mine sends me a picture. Says, I love these scatter wrap baits. We've been trolling for walleyes with them and crushing a fish, right? And he sends me this, so you can imagine my response to this.
Oh, dear Lord.
Look at the knot.
Yeah.
It looks like I tied that when I was 4, maybe 5. The knot's about 10 overhand knots, and he's got the worst swivel in the world. Now, you shouldn't have a swivel on there. Now, I'll even give him the swivel. Because when you're trolling, if you get a weed, sometimes your lure starts to spin and you may not be aware of it right away. So that's okay. We could get by with that for trolling. But to use those cheap little brass snaps that can pull out, if they're pulled really hard, and I mean, they're out fishing in one of the Great Lakes for walleyes. So they stand a chance of hooking up something pretty big.
Wow. Jay is on the ball tonight. I'll tell you, he's been sharing links all day, and he's on the ball again for the walleye professional who managed to take it home. That's incredible. Very cool. Very, very cool. But yes, that there, unfortunately, Jim, I'm hoping we can do a better job of educating folks because obviously, we're failing.
They got to be round and they got to have the little bend in the end.
Yeah. So
you can't pull it out. Plus, with that V, we've talked about this before. What that does is it traps the bait in there, so it can't really get wiggly.
Yeah. And as you mentioned before, if you are going to get, that kind of snap swivel, those, angled snaps are not the best ones to use if you're using crankbaits. You like that wide gap, that wide.
Well, you need the rounded thing, so the bait's free to move back and forth on it, not trapped down in the bottom of that V. Because you got to remember, when it pulls to the back of that V, you got pressure against it because it's being dragged. It can't move. It's tough caught in there. But if it's round it still swivels around on there. I've watched it in the water. It's really cool.
Now, for anybody who doesn't, it should jump out at you. Obviously, if you're using that kind of snap swivel, tying directly to the crankbait is not a recommended approach either, because you're sticking it to one area. It's not allowing that maximum amount of motion. So, are there any questions out there in regards to should you use a snap? I don't use one. I usually use some kind of leader material that allows that wide rounded portion.
Yeah, especially if you can tie a loop in it even.
Yeah, like a loop knot. Thanks, Steve. Exactly. A loop knot. That's exactly what I would use.
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. So what else is up? So Bruce has said that Professor Tufts has said that he will come on, and he is going to be coming on to talk a whole bunch of stuff. But of course, if you're not aware, he was the mind behind this, the science behind this, and we're going to be doing our best to put it in as many CFN's hands as we possibly can, because this is a game changer. And anyone who is doing local bass tournaments have already used this, because they had a prototype out last year and they raved about it. There were a few people that said I didn't really see a difference, but those who do tournament fishing on a regular basis here in Ontario, they did. And so as I said,
I showed you before, right? The first 100 bottles that they had.
Look at you, number 8.
Yeah.
And
I saved this for Saturday night. It's about half gone, but I just nip a little bit down.
And then just watch the flies come in. Like, how does it work for you? Now, have you noticed the difference, Jim? Have you used it?
I haven't got to use. Oh, no, I lied. I used it last fall out back here.
Yeah.
And you heard me rant last fall about how well I did.
Yeah.
It's the same old thing. If you're not where the fish are, it can't help you.
Right.
And that's the bottom line. I try to explain to people so often that if you're not where the fish are, I don't care if it's Big Jim or if it's Uncle Louie or the guy that's dragging his kids up to the ice cream store and it isn't open on weekdays. Oh no! In the pouring rain, they must have stopped the boat out here at the dock.
Oh no!
They're probably headed up to the ice cream store, but it isn't open until Thursday. But no, I don't care who you are. You can't catch fish if they're not there, and that's why we always come back to that most important thing being depth.
Yeah.
If the fish aren't there, they can't eat your lure. But I'll tell you one thing: on the weekend, the fluff deal.
Yeah.
I got tagged in like 20 things. All the Renegade guys. Greg DePalma, one of the elite guys, was headed back to New Jersey. Sent me a list. Said, "Wow, I can't believe it." He said, "I got so many points." He didn't make the cut, but he just wasn't on fish. Like I just said, if you're not there, you can't catch them.
Yeah.
But he said he saw so many that he couldn't catch on other things that he used fluff for the first time, and just ranted about it. He couldn't believe the way they just literally, when it's presented the way it's supposed to be, they just swim up and eat it. And it was really cool for me to watch Corey Johnson just pulling fish after fish with that little black spot in the tip of the nose.
I can
fish after fish. I've got several good pictures. I haven't got one though that's really like pristine clear. Come out wherever you are.
While Jim's looking for that, I just wanted to share this fantastic shot that Kelly Delorme took of Big Jim's jigs. Fantastic. We love seeing this kind of stuff. And you know what? We all enjoy, the pumping of the tires. So Kelly, big shout out to you for putting that together, because Jim really appreciated that shot.
Very much so. There's Mr. Johnson scooping a 5-pounder.
Wow.
See the little black thing in the lip?
Yeah, that looks familiar.
That's mine. And there was numerous.
Wow.
I got so many guys phoning, and like they're not phoning and asking for 5 or 10. They're phoning and asking for like 50. Can you make me 50?
And of course, the technique for fishing that, I'm hoping that you can give us a bit of an idea, but it is basically a cast out, countdown drop, and then you just reel it in.
Yeah, you literally are going like this.
Wow.
So I said to guys, I turned it on. watching Bassmaster Live, and Tammy was sitting at her desk here, and I said to her, "Oh, he's fishing the fluff." She goes, "How do you know that? You didn't see him cast it." I said, "I can tell by what he's doing." You know?
To be that.
And then, after these guys hook a fish,
Yeah.
you'll watch him. He's holding the rod up, letting the fish get tired, and he's like this.
Looking around for another one.
Looking around for another one or one following that might be bigger. And I even saw things on the weekend. I think it was Chris they showed, purposely trying to lose the fish, letting the line go slack, doing everything he could do trying to lose it because he could see one that was like 6 pounds.
Yeah.
Well, that's the one fish that couldn't have got off if it tried. He had to actually get the pliers to get the hook out,
Now, it's funny you mention that, Jim, because, in terms of fish species, and maybe we'll ask Jay when he comes on after, but in terms of fish species, like I've never really seen a walleye follow a walleye. You'll see pike follow a walleye. You'll see bass follow a walleye, whether it's largemouth or smallmouth. If you hook any kind of coarse fish like a crappie, a perch, you'll see the odd bass follow them. You hook a bass, you'll see another bass follow. But at the end of the day, like species-wise, it's predominantly bass that I see following fish.
Bass, the odd time with muskie or pike, you'll see another one, but I mean the odd time.
Right.
I don't think I've ever seen another pike. I have seen a muskie though, because we've talked about the time I had the 2 on the Suic.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that one tried to steal the lure out of the other one's mouth, and that's basically what the bass are doing. But you don't realize how small the hooks on these things are when they get in their mouth. Like, see how small the hook is?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a big one. The ones that Johnson's use are 2 sizes smaller than that.
Wow.
So you can put that hook against my finger. You can see, and I don't have teeny little fingers, but you can see how small the hook is.
100%.
And that's a Gamakatsu 604. You can't bend that. Like, I have guys say to me, "Those hooks are way too small. I catch big fish." I said, "Really?" 100%. The Johnsons use ones that are smaller because that's what they want. Once it's in, it's not coming out, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jim, unfortunately, as always, we seem to run out of time. We noticed that Lawrence just jumped into the lobby here, so he'll be coming up next. Anything that's upcoming in Just Fishing or with you this week?
I'll probably run over to the mothership on Thursday because if there's anything that they introduce at ICAST, if there's one sitting there, I'm fighting anybody for it. So it's that simple.
Well, I like your odds. You know what, Jim? I'll take those odds. Absolutely.
Only need the left hand once over the counter.
Right on.
I told you the old trick, eh? Put the right hand up a little bit.
That's it. That's all it takes.
Just get their attention.
Let them know you're there, as they say. Well, Jim, listen, you have yourself a great week. Hopefully,
everybody be safe out there.
Yeah, and stay dry.
Well, I'll tell you. Oh, the rain's just backing off a bit here now. Like, I can still barely see the trees across the street here, looking down past the garage.
Wow,
it's wild. It's just you can hear it on the roof, the hum, the buzz, just pounding down.
Wow.
I better put on my life jacket, grab myself a Diet Ginger Ale, and park my butt.
Good luck to you and Toto.
I like Toto. Do you like Toto?
I do too.
The band?
Oh, that too. Sure.
They're one of my favorite bands now.
Yeah. Right on.
They became even more favorite one of the guys I really liked the music of is Boz Scaggs.
Oh, yeah.
Like Lido Shuffle and all that stuff and everything. Yeah. I love music. Music to me is a second to fishing.
Yes.
There's never a second in the truck you don't have tunes on. I sit here in the morning, the tunes. I'll put the music on in the truck and open the door in the office so I can hear it out of the truck on the good stereo.
Well, it's funny.
I found out that all Boz Scaggs records are done with the guys from Toto, like Steve Lukather and all those guys.
Yeah.
That they're the ones that play all his music on the album because those guys are all studio musicians, right?
It's true.
People don't realize it. When Michael Jackson went to Steve Lukather and asked him to play the guitar solo on Beat It, he said, "That's not my music. Hang on." I've heard him tell his story. He phones Eddie Van Halen. "I got a gig for you."
No way.
So that's why Eddie Van Halen plays the solo on Michael Jackson's Beat It.
Wow. That's
these
incredible.
guys are session musicians supreme. They've played for everybody.
Well, you know what, Jim? As much of an honor as it is to have you here every Monday, it is just as much of an honor when you're in the truck and you take the time to call, because I know it's taken away from your appetite for music. So
we should start doing a whole separate Big Jim piece where it's just we talk about music. I'm just kidding.
Big Jim and the Jukebox Jim. Love it.
Jukebox Jim. Hey, that's got a ring to it. I'm feeling that.
All right, sir. Well, you take care of yourself and enjoy the rest of your week, my friend.
Be good, kiddies. Get out and fish.
Absolutely. Amen.
Ta-ta.
And before Lawrence, here's a word from our sponsor.
When it comes to Canadian food, we've got your back with flavors like lemon pepper, beer batter, campfire barbecue, lemon pepper dill, garlic butter and chives, and crispy Cajun. We've got a mix for every meal. Whether you're serving East Coast shrimp, West Coast salmon, succulent walleye, chicken wings, or veggies, we've got you covered. Coat your food in outdoor flavors. Available online or at these fine retailers.
There he is, the one and only Lawrence. You got in just by the hair of your...
I got back at 6:30 and then I was setting up everything, and I couldn't find the little dongle for my keyboard, right? To get the, to make the computer talk, and finally found it. And then I said, log me in. So here I am. Sorry, man.
No worries, dude. Just glad to have you here. Obviously, you have been busy recently when it comes to Bluefish Radio and Bluefish Canada News. There is lots going on, lots to discuss. What do you have for us this week?
Well, I guess you guys probably, I missed Big Jim's. I always listen to that, and Jason's, of course. But I guess you beat the Bassmaster Elite Series on the St. Lawrence to death already.
Well, you're welcome to talk about it. As I said, if you are not a fan of bass tournaments, I don't know how you couldn't get hooked after this weekend. The event kept you right on the edge of your seat, and the fact that a Canadian was right there in the mix right up until the end. And as Jim alluded to, the actual winner, young angler, but I tell you, just incredibly polite, gracious character, and you could just tell he's a solid dude.
Rookie on the road to be Rookie of the Year, and youngest one ever to win an elite, and cracked it with over 100 pounds, right? But you do the math, and 100 pounds over 4 days, right? So I mean, it's 25 pounds a day kind of thing. That's average of 5 pounds of bass. Where did these big bass come from, and when did they arrive? Is it a relatively recent thing? Is it all linked to the roundhead goby? And most would agree that these are a result of the goby. The gobies have made it possible for bass to reach these size. The big discussion 10, 15 years ago was, will the goby eat all the bass eggs? And, will these big lunkers be the last of their kind because their fry just never stands a chance of reaching, friedom, when they get gobbled up in their nest by the gobies. So obviously something's working, though, because they were throwing back 3-pounders by the dozens. But it's not just, this year, last year, the year before either. Like, I think about Charles Sims and Nigel Toohey when they were fishing down there at St. Francis in a Renegade Bass tournament. I believe it was a Renegade Bass tournament. It was over 10 years ago. And they set a new Ontario record for the biggest bag of ever a one-day bag in a bass tournament. It was just over 30 pounds. Just over 30 pounds of smallmouth bass out of that water body. That's a 6-pound average, my friend.
It is, and as Jim alluded to, it's a bag that Corey presented that is going to be a hard one to beat, or at least we think so.
What was his bag?
20, just shy of 29.
Well, the Charles and Nigel set the record with the 30, and then not even a month later, it was busted on Lake Simcoe, I think, with a 32-pound one-day bag of smallmouth. So these big bruisers, I don't know if they even have round gobies in Simcoe. Maybe they do now, but or is this just the waters are warming, the system's changing? What is it? But there's definitely bigger walleye down there too. A lot less perch, a lot less weed beds. So things are changing for sure, and it's going to just get more and more popular until it's not, I guess. But what an amazing fishery!
Unreal. And as Jason Barnucz just mentioned, 20 years ago, St. Lawrence bass tournaments could be won with a 16 to 17 pound bag per day.
Wow.
Lots of largemouth bags back then also. But
Yeah.
of course, that's when smallies were just starting to become a thing.
Yeah.
And now, not only are they a thing, they are just, it's enormous. The fact Jim shared a picture of Corey reeling in on one of Jim's fluff jigs, a 5 pound smallmouth. I mean, 20 years ago, that was an absolute giant.
Yeah.
Now it's the norm.
Now it's that you got to have, gotta have 6 pounders now, right? So it's quite astonishing. And, and just the clarity of the water too has changed the way you have to fish there. I remember when I was getting into bottom, fishing drop shots down there, dragging drop shots, you could still catch them right below the boat. But now they see you, they're not biting. And they can look up 40, 50 feet through that clear water and they see your boat. They're not biting. So as soon as they see you, they've got lockjaw. So now people have started Carolina rigging down there, with letting out a lot of line with the heavy weights to get the bait away from the boat. And then you have these people with these 7'6", 8 foot, 9 foot spinning rods casting 10-pound braid and Senkos, wacky Senkos, hundreds of feet. God only knows how long. But I mean, the Johnson brothers, they perfected this. With their Polaroid glasses, they would see, these sandy areas between the weeds, and they could see the dark shapes of the smallmouth bass there and make these incredibly long casts to the fish, hook a fish. And then as soon as one of them hooked, the other one would jump on the trolling motor and charge towards the fish at full speed because they've got relatively light tackle. They're never going to get it through the weeds out of that little sandy sandbox area in 6 feet of water. So they've got to charge over there and actually go get the fish, right? But that's how they were doing it. And how they're doing it now, hair jigs for sure, but again, long casts, right? It's just, it happened to me the other day. We were fishing on this lake and around this rocky island, and my buddies and our 2 boys, they were seeing these smallmouth bass right beside the boat, below the boat, swimming past the boat, and they were dropping everything they could, and they could not get these fish to bite. And as soon as they started seeing them, I made a really long cast towards the weed beds, and I was the only one to hook a smallmouth bass. They said, "Lawrence, why the heck did you cast way over there?" I said, "Well, these fish all saw you. They're not going to bite." And sure enough, we spent 30 minutes there trying to get some of these fish to bite, and none of them had any luck whatsoever, except for that one I hauled in from 100 feet away.
Incredible. But yes, and you know what? Careful, Jim's listening. Don't imply that the fish are smart or getting smart. We don't want to go down that rabbit hole because I have a feeling Jim will throw a cork on it and we won't ever get out. Good question here from Klassen, and I want to say the 90s, but what year did the gobies arrive to the Great Lakes?
I think they've started to become a bit of a presence, like a significant presence 15 years ago. Before that, they arrived, I think, back in the you should ask Jason. This is his area. But yeah. I think there's a difference between when they arrived and when they became dominant. And then, at some point, their population exploded. So, they were counting 100 gobies per square meter. And now that's changed a little bit. The gobies have moved and they've changed their behaviors a little bit. So, and they've adapted, but they really like that rocky water, and they like the clear water. They like water that's 10 to 20 feet deep. And I think maybe they're afraid to go in the deeper water for some reason. They get picked off too quickly in there. So did they get smart? I don't know. But this is the information I'm getting from the Thousand Islands Biological Research Station and the researchers there that study gobies, because the connection between the goby and the virus and the muskie. So they're looking at where these gobies are located and what they like to hang around in. They don't hang around in heavy weed cover because they don't really swim. They just jump around on the bottom, right? So weeds are an impediment to them. They can't just swim through the weeds. They have to clear the walk around and jump around. So they need relatively clear bottom. They like a rocky bottom, not a muddy bottom, for obvious reasons, because they're bouncing around down there. So that's their preferred sort of territory: sandy bottoms, rocky bottoms, but not the silty muck and not the heavy weeds. So that's all I can tell you about roundhead gobies. Other than that, they get quite large in some of these areas on the St. Lawrence River now.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I mean, I don't want to suggest that we're going to catch a record goby anytime soon in the Great Lakes or Lake Simcoe, but I think it's just going to happen. Like, we're gonna see the first pound goby. I know typically they're not meant to grow necessarily that large, but I think we're going to start seeing some ungodly sizes of these things. Just the way they eat and how ferocious they are. They literally will smack anything. But it's, what's nice is Jay will be coming on here to talk about, the state of Lake Michigan and some surprises that are going on there. And even with the salmon and char species of fish that are found in the Great Lakes, we are starting to see evidence of them starting to eat goby as well. So it seems as if all sport fish have a little bit of goby in their diet.
Yes. And they're growing as a result, right? The only ones that seem to be suffering from eating these fish are the muskie, which, here you are, the apex predator, and it's more sensitive to these viruses, probably because they live so long. And when you live that long and you get that old, it's like anything, right? When you get old, you get a little your resilience goes down a little bit, right, to viruses and diseases and things like that. You're more susceptible to them. So maybe that's why these, giant muskies, we've had these die-offs the last few years, again this year and back 10, 12 years ago again, with this virus and the linkage to the gobies.
So that's okay. And that was going to be my question. So all these fish die-offs that we're seeing, especially the muskie up in the Ottawa area, we've 100% attributed all of it to the goby from what you're saying?
That's what the TIBS, the Thousand Island Biological Research Station, that's their summation, that the virus is in the gobies, and they think it's coming from the zebra mussels. They're getting it from the zebra mussels because they eat the small zebra mussel. And these gobies have, like I said, I think I mentioned this, they do not spend any time trying to become resilient to viruses, because they spawn 3 or 4 times a year. They put all their energy into spawning. They don't give a crap if they live 6 months, a year, whatever. It means nothing to them. They just know that they're going to spawn 3-4 times a year. Just their whole mission is to create offspring, and they put all their energy into that instead of fighting viruses. So they become vectors for virus. Viruses can be hosted inside them and have a positive relationship with these fish that aren't trying to kill off these viruses. So that's problematic. Every species has its strengths and weaknesses, and gobies are prolific. That's their strength, and their weaknesses is they don't fight off virus.
Interesting. What else is going on? I know there's a lot of news that's upcoming. I know that Richard Dunlop shared a link that I think would probably spur up some criticism and some negative connotations, because it suggests that when it comes to bass season, do we really need to target bass on the spawning grounds, and what damage are we doing by doing so? Now, it was a scientist that is from the States, and as we know, in most states, they do target these fish on the spawning beds. We see it in the tournaments themselves. Up here, what is it going to do to the species as a whole? Well, I don't feel that when it comes to bass, a lot of folks eat bass. So the catch and release is definitely going to help with their numbers and preserving their numbers. But it is an interesting point. And, at the end of the day, as anglers, could we hold off from the opener to bass season till the bass themselves are done protecting the nest? Because a lot of folks don't realize is after the eggs hatch and those fry are running around, the adult male bass is still corralling those fry, still protecting those fry. And as I've seen at my place, sometimes up to 3 weeks. So go ahead.
You're right. They 3-4 weeks, and then they take one big bite of the bait ball and they move off. Right? They said, "All right, I'm done," and they take a big chomp and they move on, and then the rest of them are on their own. But you're right. They really, the males put a lot of energy, and they're not feeding during this time when they're protecting. Right? So they're a little bit tired, they're a little bit exhausted, and if they have to fight off, being caught and released a few times, and they come back to their nest, and they say if as much as 30-40% of the fry are gone, or the eggs, they'll just abandon that, and they'll just say, oh well, that was a waste of time, and they don't stick around and guard until there's nothing left. They guard the vast majority, and as soon as that number goes down significantly by half or so, they give up. So that's a problem. I remember the B1, the Berkeley B1, when that opened up, I think it was 2008 or so, on Lac de Montagne. It's where the St. Lawrence opens up on the Ottawa River, opens up onto the St. Lawrence River. It was held on the first day of bass season, and there was so much controversy about that. How do you pre-fish? And then the organizer got a dispensation from the ministry to allow the anglers to pre-fish a week before the tournament opened. So then these guys were in there pre-fishing and finding all these nesting bass, and then they fished opening day of the tournament. There was 150 teams. It was sold out. 150 teams, top quality anglers from across Ontario, Quebec, and many from the States, and they all fished nests. They all fished nesting fish. That's where everyone caught their fish. So there was a lot of controversy about the timing, and should anyone have an opener tournament on opening day? How do you pre-fish for that? You're just encouraging people to break the rules. And then we had a lot of research done by Bruce Tufts, who talked about, how quickly panfish can gobble up the eggs in a nest. If you pull a female off the nest, and the panfish, within minutes can destroy the eggs. And that's all been documented through scuba and cameras. And then the pressure mounted. So now we have this pre-spawn catch and release, and then there's this sort of, I think, time period where you can't fish, and then it opens up to harvesting, right? So they've sort of spread it out before nesting, before spawning, a break during spawning, and then fishing again after the spawn. So they're dialing in with science for sure. And I think as long as you can dial it in, but it's the Ontario government moved the bass season up a week because they said climate change was warming up the water faster. Then we had that big flood in 2017 on the St. Lawrence River, and then again in 2019. So the spawning was late. So now you had the season starting well before the spawning started, and that, because it was cold water on the St. Lawrence River. So all that talk about climate change and warming water and giving anglers an extra week of fishing was just all, went up in smoke, right? No one's fault, can't predict nature, So I think we need to take this in our own hands somewhat until the science can catch up. But things are changing all the time. I think we just need to take it in our own hands and be aware of what we're doing.
Well, it's what spawned this, and Steve has said Lawrence is making my blood pressure rise with bringing this up. Huge mistake, but we can't change the past. We can only use the past as a lesson. You're 100% right, Steve. But what made me really think about this, not only that it was a really interesting article, and thanks to Richard for sharing it, but the buy-in that we saw in Manitoba, especially Lake Winnipeg and the Red River, to the anglers, their officials basically said, listen, the water temperatures are too low. Fish have not spawned yet. We really like to postpone the opening, and we don't want you in the rivers. One, because it was unsafe with all the flooding, but two, because they had determined that the fish had not spawned yet. And the buy-in from the anglers, and I'm sure there was a lot of controversy and a lot of upset anglers, but for the most part, all the anglers, if I recall correctly, based on the information that was shared to me, they bought into it. And I think as anglers, if we can somehow get the word out that perhaps if you can identify a bass on a bed, that we do our best to leave it alone. Now, what to look for and how to go about that in, say, high winds and wavy, waves that are pounding the shore, it might be hard to determine that. But it's an interesting topic to discuss. But as anglers, I think it's a choice.
It's a choice. It's a personal choice. We know what we're doing. You can see the nests. They're obvious, right? They're
Yeah.
obvious, and you can pretend, oh, I didn't know they were there. You just throw spinner baits around, but people are targeting these nests sometimes, and a lot of people don't. So I think it's going to come down to education, because we'll never be able to regulate it to the degree that people want it to be regulated as weather becomes more and more unstable. We've had like record floods and more of those all over the country. And cold water, we had a very cold spring this year. I look at the St. Lawrence, the Ottawa River here, and we were 2-3 weeks behind this year in terms of weed growth, and the water was high and cold, and the fish were just not relating to weed beds because there wasn't any. So the river was pretty much empty opening day muskie season, just because no one could find the muskie. No one could find. But then a few years ago, when the river was flooded, the fish go up into that flooded area and spawn.
Yeah.
And then they can be caught on opening day, but you got to leave them alone, because they need to spawn a second time, and they will spawn a second time once the river comes down again. They will spawn a second time if you give them a chance. And a lot of the muskie anglers on the Ottawa River said, hey, let's give them a chance to spawn a second time. Let's just leave them alone for another 2 or 3 weeks and just wait for things to get normalized so they can have a successful spawn. And I thought that was pretty amazing, for sure.
It is. Yeah, it is. And, folks too will ask me about walleye, and no, they don't go in and spawn all at once. They'll do it 2 or 3 times, sometimes 4 or 5 times. They'll lay a different amount of eggs. They don't lay all their eggs necessarily all at once. So to your point, yeah, it's a process. It does take some time, especially if the water is very slow to warm up. But as Jason mentioned, and there is a lot of discussion about the use of sanctuaries. It has worked in many water bodies, especially when it comes to walleye, because we all know where the walleye fry hang out after they recede from the rivers. So Horwood Lake is a perfect example of where those sanctuaries are in relation to where they're spawning, and very well protected. And I want to say it's not often you find an angler in those sanctuaries. So if it's properly identified, perhaps maybe that's all we need to do. But at the end of the day, I hate the thought of taking away fishing opportunities to people. But I think if we have the fish in mind, it is maybe something that we need to think about as an angler.
Yeah, I agree. And the sanctuaries, is something I've never heard an angler speak against them. Never. I think it's they have the rest of the lake, and these sanctuaries are generally very minuscule in terms of percentage of water, and yeah, maybe it would be prime fishing water, but there's all the rest of the lake. Just leave that spot alone, and people respect that. They realize that that's the future of their sport, right? Is those nurseries, and why go in there and raid the nursery? That's just wrong.
Amen. Before we let you go, is there anything that you wanted to share that's upcoming in Bluefish Canada or Bluefish Radio News?
Well, we've been working on some interviews, and we've got one that we're going to be publishing soon, and that's that whole story about the interception salmon fishery. So that'll be coming out shortly. There's another interesting article that I just wanted to, I've been following, and we've talked about this, is the nuclear power plants on the shores of the Great Lakes, and what are we going to do with them, and how much of a danger, how much risk do they pose to the habitat of the fish and to us and to the quality of the water. And there was an interesting article in the Walrus magazine about the Chalk nuclear power plant up on the Ottawa River, Chalk River, which flows right into the Ottawa River, and 2 major meltdowns that happened in 1952 and 1958. Like, these were on a Richter scale of 1 to 7. These were 5s, right? So they were significant fires, and hundreds and hundreds of people who worked there in military risked life and limb to put these fires out by using buckets of sand, and never got compensated, never were acknowledged. And this is only now in the 2021 federal budget that there's going to be some money paid to these people. They're in their late 80s now. And many of them have been disfigured and lived troublesome lives because of multiple cancers that have been linked directly to these isotopes and things from these nuclear fires, right? These meltdowns, and the way they had to get rid of it, like pouring the contaminated water into a sand pit and allowing the sand pit to sort of filter it, and then that would then flow into the river. And that's still, that's a knock-on effect that's going to be around forever. We do not have. We've learned a lot, but we've also never been really honest about the lessons we've learned. It's never been really shared, like 3 Mile Island or Chernobyl or what happened in Japan. What happened up there on Chalk River is never. Those stories have never been told until they're just starting to come out now. And then look at this, 70 years later, those stories are just starting to come out, and they were major nuclear meltdowns and that are still impacting the environment to this day. So as we all turn our attention to micro and small size nuclear reactors as a possibility for moving away from fossil fuels and creating sort of sustainable energy sources for northern communities where wind and solar can be a real problem, and a welcome relief to diesel-powered generators creating electricity in many of these communities. We need to have those conversations, because this is about impacting the rivers, the lakes, and these impacts go on for thousands of years.
Yeah, and we have learned a lot since then. We have lots of redundancies when it comes to nuclear power, and it is something definitely we need to embrace, because it's the way of the future. And to your point, obviously, absolutely, we can't be silly on how we approach it, but I know we have learned an awful lot since the 50s on how to properly protect ourselves, control it, and get the most efficiency out of it.
Yeah.
Lawrence, as always, my friend, thanks so much for joining us and spreading the word, spreading the info, and just being you, bud.
Oh, man. Thank you so much, buddy. And thanks for having me on, everyone.
Right. I'm just glad you made it.
You too.
All the best, my friend.
Thanks, buddy.
And before we speak to Jay Barnucz, here's a word from a sponsor.
Want to know the difference between power bait and other soft plastics? Ask the fish. Berkeley scientists have thousands of flavors tested on thousands of fish. Natural, man-made. Every bait that's ever hit the water. No matter the shape, size, or color, power bait is the only one that is scientifically proven. Fish bite and will not let go.
J-Dog in the house. How you doing, Jay?
Good, Scotty. Good to see you, my man.
Buddy, you have been on fire today. The links you've been sharing, the knowledge you've been sharing, my friend, I can't thank you enough. You may come on last, but I'll tell you, last but not least, because by the time you do come on, you have shared a wealth of
Did you hear me clawing at the door? I was like clawing at the door. I want in.
So to answer, because I believe, yes, Clausen is still here with us. When was it? Obviously, that and Lawrence brought up a good point. When did they start to become noticeable? But when did they roughly get introduced into the Great Lakes, the goby?
So round goby was first detected in 1993 at the mouth of the Detroit River near Pesh Island in Windsor, and it took. Now we don't know how long it took for them to spread throughout the Great Lakes. We do know that the goby took its time. It probably didn't. I think some of the records for Lake Ontario weren't until like 10 years later, like 2003. So I want to say that Lake Ontario in the last 20 years, Lake St. Clair was 30 years, but don't forget, they spread they don't spread on their own like they do. There's different ways of spread. So they spread on their own. But if everyone's seen a goby swim, they're not the most, they're not the fastest moving fish. They kind of hop along the bottom, right?
Yeah.
So one of the biggest vectors or methods of spreading them was, so they came here by ships, right? But they spread by ships within the lakes. So you have freighters coming from overseas, brought them here. And then when there's also interlake traffic. So freighters going from Windsor to Montreal, carrying products, they have to take on and off ballast water. That's really one of the main vectors on how they spread. But they've spread through dams. They've been known to go through locks. We've seen them I've personally caught them seining inside of locks in the Trent Severn waterway, like pulling a seine net through a lock. I've caught them.
And I believe that, because if you see how water flows when these locks open and close and fill up and what have you, it's an incredible movement of water each and every time these locks change or change in terms of heat.
So OFEH has been tracking them for 20 years, and so we've seen them move, up through Peterborough. Like they're already through Peterborough up into, I think they're into Stony now. They're in Lake Simcoe. Don't forget, there's a lot of famous baits, and we'll talk about, if anyone who is an ice angler on here, Meags jigs on Lake Simcoe. Amen. That's a goby imitation. When they put a little tube jig on the end and they're hopping on the bottom, and it's green pumpkin color. Like lake whitefish gorge themselves on not big round gobies. People, when we talk about 100 per square meter, Lawrence is talking about, we're not talking about these ones.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about literally half-inch gobies. They reproduce 3 times a year or more. And so that's why they're just so abundant. And they've changed the fisheries. Their numbers go up and down like everything else out there, but they're here to stay. They've greatly changed fisheries in our Great Lakes. They have.
I didn't know that I thought they spawned in the spring and in the fall. I had no idea they spawned more than that. That's incredible.
If conditions are right, they're multiple spawns in a year.
Wow.
At least twice, if not more. Probably as climate change happens and the lakes slowly warm, they'll probably spawn more frequently.
Interesting.
All they have on their side is time. Once they're in, there's no getting rid of them. Like they're there to stay. One thing I didn't like about, so the broadcast on the weekend was great. Like Jim was right. It's a perfect storm. If anyone has fished now, smallmouth fishing when the lake is that flat is hard to do. I know from experience. They're catchable, but you really have to work at them some days. Those fish are skittish. They can see you can see them. So the fish they caught were, deservedly, the ones who won, and they well deserved. Because even in that event, anglers who caught 20 pounds a day went home after the second day cut. That's amazing. And to think that Corey, he got the biggest bag of the tournament on the last day, and he on day 3 he couldn't get more than 22 pounds. I think it was 21 and change. He lost the event on day 3 because he couldn't catch more than 22 pounds. Like that's amazing. That's just an amazing fishery. And they got to fish a lot longer because there was no wasted time traveling, battling waves. This probably won't happen again for years.
And it's funny you say that, because that's what a lot of folks have said since the event ended, that you will never see anything like this in the near future. Anyway, you can never say never, but it was the perfect storm. But as I said, I can't say it enough. If you are not a fan of bass tournaments, I don't know how you're not after that event on the weekend, because it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And what's amazing too is just, watching that footage. And if anyone has been out to fish, again, for smallmouth in any species of fish in that calm of conditions, that is some of the hardest fishing. It's the greatest day to be on a boat, to ride around the lake when it's calm and flat, and you're not going to bust a kidney or get a herniated disc in your spine. But that's not the best day to fish, to me. You need a little bit of chop on that water. And some of the anglers talked about that in the afternoon. They got a little ripple on the water and it improved the fishing. If you're a walleye angler, now I've caught them on flat days like that, but
few and far between.
Not preferred. Not preferred way to fish.
You need what is called the walleye chop.
Yeah. I got to give a shout out to my sponsor, because there was a lot of purple bags in that event on the weekend.
Yeah.
And it's great to see, for the last probably 2 or 3 years, MaxSense really cornered the market, and I think competition is healthy. Biofuels come online now in direct competition to this. Berkeley has really set a standard, and I'm really proud of that fact. And I like to see the competition. And in fact, a lot of the top 10 anglers use Berkeley MaxSense. I'd say half, but the other half were using a lot of baits that directly competed with Berkeley, and it's good to see that competition. I really, really enjoy that, and we're going to see some great. Jim touched on it. ICAST starts tomorrow, so everyone should check out ICAST website this week to check out some of the great new tackle that's coming from all the manufacturers. Everyone's bringing out new stuff. It's an exciting day, exciting weekend. The trouble is we're not going to see some of that gear until next summer. Unfortunately, that's kind of how ICAST works, but it's something to look forward to. Really, really exciting.
Interesting. I was talking to one of our sponsors on the weekend, and we mentioned, Brad and I, about the change in what folks are seeing in the industry, especially if you're a retailer. A lot of big items are not selling as well as they were, say, in the spring, where a lot of the small terminal tackle, jigs, plastics, this, that, and everything else is really starting to fly off the shelf. So it's interesting to see that transition from big ticket items to now the smaller, more.
Well, let's be honest. We've gone through the pandemic, and that's pretty much wrapped up now, Scotty. And we saw a big shift in outdoor engagement. And one thing prior to that, one of the biggest events in human history, I'll use plural, events in human history that really drove the outdoor market was, and I hate to say it, but economic turndown. Yeah. And right now with interest rates going up, and there's a lot of worry about people and home value of homes and value of assets. Fishing is going to stay, and engagement in fishing is probably going to continue to grow, which is good news for a lot of us, because it's a sport that, again, you can spend as much as or a little as you want when it comes to angling, but it is an activity that you can do on the cheap and have it and really enjoy your time.
It's the best part. It truly is. And at the end of the day, those who have the passion for fishing do so unconditionally, and there is no price tag associated with it. So as Jim says all the time, just get out there and fish.
Yep. So Scotty, I'm going to touch on a couple of things that were talked about prior to me coming on. And one of the things that you and Lawrence were talking about was the use of fish sanctuaries. Mm-hmm. And there's some controversial information out there. I put a link in the chat about a local fish sanctuary here that's been around for, I want to say at least 50 years. I'm 47 years old, and this sanctuary is basically, you take the inner bay of Long Point, which is about it's over 20,000 acres, the inner bay of Long Point, not the outer bay, just the inner bay of Long Point. Half of that is a sanctuary from Mother's Day weekend until the opening of bass. And it's not even a bass sanctuary. It is a no fishing allowed sanctuary. The ministry puts out buoys. It's marked. All the local boat ramps have a map. If you click on that link, you'll go to a Facebook page with a map. And it's produced, that area of Long Point Bay produces tens of thousands of smallmouth bass every single year. Yes, when the season opens, there are anglers targeting bass on beds. Whether they're doing it on purpose or not. So a lot of those anglers are not on their trolling motors precisely angling. A lot of the anglers out there, literally, Scotty, they park their boat and it's all like 6 to 10 feet of water, and they just let the wind drift and they just cast, or they troll rapalas and they cast a tube jig, and they're doing it kind of blindly, and they catch thousands of fish. And that sanctuary has been, I'm going to say, proven working for decades. Now, where can this be applied? Well, in some of the smaller Rideau lakes, which has been coming up in some of these discussions, there are some sanctuaries in those lakes already. Some of the embayments are marked and closed to fishing, but they're small embayments. The worry that there's some scientists out there that worry that by harvesting fish, not even harvesting fish, but taking fish off their beds, it's not just eating the larvae or eating the eggs. You're actually impacting the bass population overall, because some of these fish are not maturing properly. They're not growing properly. There's a lot of these life history, age and growth questions that are coming up. And the thought is, if you have a huge lake, let's take Big Rideau Lake as an example, okay, a good sized inland lake, creating some sanctuaries to allow some of the population to spawn uninterrupted. You're basically, and this, your example of walleye, I made me think of Rice Lake, Scotty.
Mhm.
There's walleye spawning up at Loch 19 in Peterborough. It's a famous area for a walleye spawn from probably for Southern Ontario, probably one of our premier walleye fisheries. And they have an extended closing on the river to protect those fish. But there's still walleye spawning in Rice Lake on some of the shoals, and there's walleye spawning in tributaries of the Otonabee. They're not protected when walleye season opens. It's open season on them.
Yeah.
But the main spawning area, to me, I would think it's the main spawning area, which is that Loch 19 at Otonabee River. It's closed for an extra week or two after season opens. And I think that there's some creative ways to create sanctuaries. Sanctuary doesn't have to be a bad word. I think that when we say sanctuary, anglers, well, you're taking my right away to fish. I think a lot of anglers would understand that a sanctuary can enhance a fishery. If we didn't have some of the sanctuaries we have, we wouldn't have some of the great fisheries that we have. So
100%.
I think that's some of this discussion going on right now. And I don't think it goes against what Bruce Tufts and others have come up with in terms of extending the bass seasons. I think it's a creative management tool to allow more angling, but to maybe enhance populations where they need enhancement, or to make good lakes better, where you have a large lake with lots of little embayments and you can create sanctuaries. And the sanctuaries don't be very big. Like, you're just blocking off a bay from fishing. You're just putting some buoys across it. Cottage associations have done it on some lakes, where I've been to certain lakes in Ontario over the years where cottage associations have taken it upon themselves to put in a volunteer only sanctuary where they're like, no fishing in this bay. And sometimes it's not fishing driven. I've seen sanctuaries put in because of nesting loons or osprey. That's fine. You protect the loon nest in that bay from all the boat wakes. You're protecting the fish in that bay from all the anglers, right? So there's a lot to be, there's a long way to go on this discussion, but I think it's a positive. I really, really do.
100%. And it might be a little bit different when it comes to bass and walleye in the sense of the sanctuary and how it works. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to target the adult fish in a sanctuary for the simple reason that they're the ones that are protecting the fry. Right. From a walleye standpoint, we don't even want boat traffic in a sanctuary because unfortunately, when walleye hatch, those fry are in the first 18 inches of the water column. And unfortunately, that's where the props are. That's where the trolling motors are. Everything is. So, and I would have to say the Kawartha Lakes are a perfect example of that. That if you can attribute one thing to how the walleye population maybe declined, a lot of folks point at that. One is obviously water levels, but the other is that folks are using their cottages a lot sooner than they ever did back in the day. And you have that boat traffic, jet skis and what have you. So yes, I totally a great point and two ways to look at it.
Yep. Now let's talk about alewife, Scotty. So there's a news report that came out this week. And for any of those listening or who listen to this show after the fact, they're going to want to read this article. And we were talking in the backstage about even alewife this year. Now, alewife, and I'm going to put a link in the chat. Some of the CFNers can check this out later. It's a long, I kind of put the main caption in there to kind of catch it all. But since 2010, the state of Michigan has seen the biggest die-off of alewife since 2010. So we're being pushed back to the 60s where we had these large alewife die-offs. So they're going to increase their stocking of Chinook salmon from 800,000 to 1 million fish this year to deal with the alewife increase. And I expect from what we were talking about backstage that New York DEC will probably be looking at the same thing for Lake Ontario. Alewife it's cyclical, right? It's cyclical, and these fish populations go up and down. And if there's an opportunity to control alewife, to two, enhance the sport fishing of these lakes, it's really cool that we have scientists out there, fisheries management scientists, who are collecting the data to make these choices. So, Scotty, like one of the most poorly funded areas of government is natural resources. It's like fractions of a percentage point in Ontario.
Yeah.
If we didn't have researchers, and these are fisheries management scientists who study the management of fisheries, if we didn't have them out there collecting information, we wouldn't have information like this to go forward with. So the fact that they have data out there, they're probably doing surface trawls, bottom trawls, looking at alewife densities in the lake, alewife population in Lake Michigan. They're saying, you know what, here's an opportunity we have to, one, control an invasive species, which it is, which under law, we are obligated to monitor and manage invasive species. We truly are. If we stop doing that, look at the sea lamprey control program. If we stop treating rivers for sea lamprey, we're going to go back in time to the decimation of lake trout in the 60s. We throw them back in time if we stop today. So this example of Michigan increasing stocking levels is a great example of fisheries management in the Great Lakes. And I'm really happy I tripped across that article last week in the news.
It's interesting you say cyclical too, because my heart bleeds for those charter captains that got rid of their boats when they shut down the salmon fishery in the southern end of Lake Michigan. Oh, the controversy and uproar that resulted from that was just unbelievable. And to hear that this has come back, I mean, there are probably going to be a lot of upset charter captains that don't have a boat. And to hear this news that they're going to now stock even more fish, it's amazing. It wasn't that long ago. I want to say less than 10 years ago. That's what it seemed as if they were suggesting that the alewife population had crashed in Lake Michigan. And here it is 10 years later, a decade later, and now there's just too many of them. That's incredible.
Yeah. And you know, it might only be a short window. It could be a long window. What's causing the alewife increase in population? I have no idea what's causing it. Who knows? There's got to be a reason why, and there's usually so many variables with this type of thing. When we get looking at modeling, and we're not even talking about population models, like, because this is about ecology of the lake. So you got to look at the entire food web. So you got to look at, like, I couldn't even list all the parameters. And to be honest, I in my line of work, I work with individuals who are modelers, and they're not walking a runway, man. They're sitting by a computer crunching numbers. And one of my jobs is to go out and collect the data that they run the models with. Okay. Yeah. And so these, and I call them, like, I'm a nerd, they're nerds, and they're sitting at a computer, but yes, they may never touch a fish in their career, but they are doing a lot to help us manage our fisheries as those modelers. And, you know, this type of data is so important for them, and we wouldn't be able to see these positive changes. What's cool is, at least in the short term, you know, as an angler and as a you know, we look at our fishing community, so many of our friends and colleagues who have lost money during the pandemic because of the restrictions that were put on charter captains, you know, and then now we have this, we have increases in gas and blah, blah, you know, let's look at a positive here. If there's an opportunity to increase salmon fishing in the Great Lakes, even if it's a short window where we can do that, then that's great. Let's do that. Right. So
100%, because, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we just want anglers to be able to go out and catch fish. And for a long period of time, they have not been able to, as I said, in the southern part, recreational anglers, I believe, were able to still fish. I don't know what their catch limit was, but it wasn't very much. And as you said, like, they really pulled back on the stocking because, as I said, the alewife population crashed. But to Mark Bennett's point, you're 100% right. I'm very interested in what may happen at Charleston Lake. My lake, I'm only my third year there, but the lake overall has way different than the last 2 years, and some folks see that, especially if you spend an awful lot of time on a lake, that things may change. It doesn't necessarily mean the fish disappear. They may just go somewhere else based on how fast water temperature.
You know, there's so much that goes on in these lakes. Like, you know, let's think about some of our fish in Ontario. Like, in the southern part of the province, and the further north you go, this changes. But these fish are so long-lived. The further north you go, these fish are more long-lived. So, you know, like Mark, in Charleston Lake, you have a real interesting fishery because you have everything from deep lake trout to smallmouth to largemouth, right? It's a larger lake in that part of Ontario, so you have a lot of diversity of habitats, a lot of different fish species, and it's really hard to get a handle on some of those lakes. And now the ministry is out doing monitoring on those lakes using the broad scale monitoring program, but, you know, it's really hard to answer questions, and especially in a 3-year window. What I find funny about anglers is I'm as guilty of this as the next person, that I have some local fisheries that I kind of pass judgment on, but I always wonder if I should be. I'm torn between the I want to catch more fish, Jason, versus the I'm the biologist, Jason, right? And I think sometimes these fish are so they're long-lived and they can change their ecology. Like they're so adaptable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. So lake trout still
Exactly.
coming off weed lines. Exactly.
Yeah.
So as I think we talked about this with with Jim all the time, right? You got to think outside the box, okay, and make sure that we work on, don't do the same thing if it ain't working, right? So we all think about going to Charleston Lake, like a lake like that. If I've never been there before for lake trout, first thing I'm going to do is, well, I'm going to get out my lead core rod and I'm going to go troll down about 20 to 30 feet. This is literally what I'm going to do. I'm not a big lake trout person. I target lake trout occasionally, mostly because I just like the challenge of fishing for something that I normally don't fish for, but I would never fish for them off of weed lines, right? So there's something going on there. Now, what's happening there, Mark, is probably this. When we get these weather patterns every year, so I was actually talking about this with Trevor on the weekend because Trevor was asking me about what's a thermocline. Okay, and I told him that, so in temperate climates, when we have a lake that's typically more than about 30 feet or deeper, we get a thermocline. So a thermocline, for a lot of folks, they do know this, but you get stratification happening. Once the surface temperature hits around 60 degrees in the spring, you start to stratify. So there's this thin layer of water that literally can go from 65 to 55 or 65 to 50. Like it's literally a 10-degree jump. But sometimes it takes a long time for that thermocline to form. And that thermocline can be delayed in the spring if we get lots of rain, if we get lots of wind, keep stirring the lake up. The thermocline doesn't set up very well. So on case of deeper weed lines, when you're flipping for largemouth in Charleston Lake, you probably are seeing weeds. I'm going to guess the euphotic zone. So the euphotic zone in a lake is how much the depth of water in which the light can penetrate, right? Every lake is different. The euphotic zone on Rice Lake is like 6 to 8 feet deep. That's how the deepest weeds in Rice Lake are like typically most are 8 feet. In Balsam Lake, 12 to 14 feet. But in some of these shield lakes, you might see weeds rooting down to 15, 17, 18 feet. And now you're talking 18 to 20 feet deep weeds and the thermocline's only at 25. There's going to be lake trout patrolling that thermocline barrier at the base of those weeds, feeding on perch, probably feeding on fall fish. I know lake trout love fall fish, and I've caught fall fish from 2 feet of water to 200 feet of water in some of these lakes and in the shield. So, Mark, I'm not surprised that you're catching lake trout in those areas sometimes.
No, absolutely. And to your point, Jay, obviously thermoclines can be, a thing that as anglers, we certainly want to look at and target, especially if you're out in Lake Ontario. Adjusting to the thermocline will sometimes make the difference in catching fish and not catching fish, especially the salmon and char species, because there's a lot of oxygen at that thermocline, a lot of sediment. Some of the bait fish, that's where they hang out as well.
And some of the predators don't like to go up to that warmer water, but they will on occasion because that's where the food is in some lakes, right? So they'll take that risk. They'll give up some comfort of cold water to feed, and you'll see that with lake trout. Lake trout are a highly adaptable fish. There's a reason why lake trout have been in these lakes since glaciers left Ontario. They're survivors. They really are. They're a glacial relic species. That's what they're referred to as. So
interesting. Wow. Great stuff as always, Jay. Well, that brings us, sorry, unless you have something more.
No, man, that's good. Dude, we'll save it for next week because I got more, but I'm trying to stay under my 30 minutes and I'm touching that line right now. So.
Well, what we didn't get to do last week that was troublesome, and I see there's a few of you still on tonight, and we will make sure that we share this part of the segment again. But last week, we announced that Nick, I'm not even going to bother trying to pronounce your last name, but he was very gracious and generous and offered up because he won twice in a row his prize pack of the bait fuel. And as I said, Can't talk enough about this. And when we get Dr. Bruce Tufts on here, we will be talking about it even more. But we want to put it in the hands of as many CFNers as we possibly can. So last week we posted the fish, but I don't think we got many answers, if any, because you weren't allowed to comment. So we're going to post it first. Now, we're also going to post a second, which, of course, is Nick's prize that he's given up. So there are going to be 2 of these drawn next week to a lucky winner. And if you want 1 ballot, hopefully you get one of the answers. But if you want 2 ballots on the wheel, you'll get both of them right. First one's first, Jay. We're going to share this from last week. Obviously, I expect a lot of folks to get this one. It is a fish that you normally see in the rivers. If you are in the southern part of the province and most of the other provinces as well, you will see these fish and probably have used them as bait for a number of other fish species that you've been targeting. It's common, and as I said, it is something that you see. That is the easy one. However, I'm pretty sure a lot of folks, Jay, have not seen this fish. I see it actually posted a lot on other fishing community pages when folks catch it, because it's not a typical fish that you normally see. Where would these fish normally hang out, Jay?
Well, these fish are actually found primarily in the Great Lakes, but they're also found inland lakes. They're actually found in Manitoba as well. So this fish is often caught, a lot of walleye anglers catch these fish, and I get sent this picture regularly. They'll grab a bottom bouncer from time to time. They are in the walleye and perch family. So, what I suggest is, now I know there's some of you that are on here that are like wondering, I'm not sure, I can't answer this right now. Don't be afraid to come back and drop your comments in after the fact and maybe rewatch the video to look at those pictures again. But definitely think about the names and drop it in the comments, and we're going to draw 2 next week because Rogers or the Russians or somebody messed up last week's show. So
yes, absolutely. I'll even blame Donald Trump for at this point.
Hey, yeah,
he's been shouldering a lot of blame. He can handle it. But again, fish species number 1, guess that. Put it in the comments, and right beside it, put in this species of fish. If you know both, you will get 2 names on the wheel that will spin next week. And if you're lucky, you'll get a chance to win one of these. Jay, as always, my friend, it is a pleasure to have you. You are a wealth of information, as always. And as I said, dude, you're a class act. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Fantastic. All right, that's our show. Thanks for all of you for joining us. Thanks for all of you who participate in a positive manner and do so continuously when it comes to our many CFN events and platforms. I'm really looking forward again to seeing all the CFNers that show up to this event. Charles Durecci and the entire team from Elliott Lake and area rod and gun clubs. This kids fishing derby is something that is going to be epic, long overdue because, of course, COVID. But I'd love to see as many CFNers that live in the area at this event. Hoping to see you all there. And, of course, can't wait to meet all the kids and see them catch a whack of fish. It's this Saturday, July 23rd at 8 a.m. If you have any desire of showing up, by all means, reach out to our good buddy Chuck from Bait and Bite Me, and he will point you in the right direction. In the meantime, stay classy, stay safe, wet a line, go fishing, as Jim said. Just go fishing. Just do it. Just fish it. And we will see you next week. In the meantime, I think it's time for Dave to take us away, as he always does a fantastic job. And take it away, Dave.
Well, as much as I hate to admit it, I guess we've run out of time. So I've enjoyed it, but I'm going to do something I haven't done since season 1. Turn out the lights, the party's over. They say that all good things